And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third of our Azure webinar series. As you might remember, we covered Azure WAN in the first one. Second one was all about Azure Sentinel, and today we're going to be talking about advanced analytics. My name is Kevin Vogel. I'm the Vice President of Virtualization and Cloud, and I'm lucky enough to again have my co-host here, Jason Milgram, who's our Vice President of Platform Architecture and Engineering. Jason, how are you today?
I'm good. Glad to be here and excited to show everyone a little about advanced analytics and some of the work we do here.
And I'll tell you, this is the one that I learned the most about preparing for this webinar. It's something that doesn't come across my desk very often in what I do. And, you know, this is really an interesting subject. I think it's something that a lot of customers are starting to take a look at. I know that when I talk to customers, Jason, you know, they always tell me that their data is their most valuable asset. Is that what you hear a lot of times?
Yeah, we hear that a lot, and uh, a lot of times how we get introduced to projects is someone started playing with Power BI and they made some dashboards and charts available. And then everyone started realizing, hey, 24/7 access to dynamic charts to answer my questions. Uh, so I no longer have to, get that weekly chart. I can access it anytime, and I can start actually dynamically manipulating the data to get other answers instead of, sending an email or making a call to someone saying, "Hey, this is great, but can you show me it, this way?" And
You
it
know,
takes off from there.
and I think, you know, I think large companies have been doing this for a long time. And I just think now with the cloud and now with access to a lot of these tool sets, without really having to know how to set it up and integrate it and keep it patched and do all of the things to maintain this environment, I think this has opened this field up to a much broader audience of customers. You think so? Am I
Oh
thinking?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just dashboards and charts. I mean, that is kind of one of the end results, but it's actually uh, finding meaning in data. And it's actually, this can take us to our first slide, which is, why are companies doing this? And it's, making it easy for them to collect and analyze and learn from the data. And the whole point of this is so they can start making the smartest decisions possible. And this spans from
Well, at least the most
finance.
educated. Maybe not the
Correct.
smartest, but the most educated decisions.
Right, at that point in time, based on current data. And it's not just, financial reports. It's data for marketing, it's data for sales, it's data for healthcare, it's data for Internet of Things enabled devices, uh, and the list goes on. And so it's not just it's providing both diagnostic data but also predictive data. And the whole point is, let's turn this into, actionable insights for the organization.
Yeah, can you give me, I know that you know, this is something that it's kind of like your hobby. It's what you do for a lot of customers. Can you give me like a real world scenario of what you've done for, and don't have to give a customer's name, but, you know, an idea for our audience so that maybe it will spark some interest in them.
Sure, and I'll at the very end of this, I'll show some demos, some examples of that data. But some projects are fairly small. It's someone who just wants, we want our quarterly reports, uh, available internally for the management team to review. And it can save them a lot of time if they get it set up in with these tools instead of the manual effort of putting together these spreadsheets, collecting the data, putting together the report. So it can be something as small but very important to something much larger. Connecting up thousands of doctors' offices around the country where data needs to be shared with prescriptions. Um, you know, it's been said before that every company is, you know, is is in IT, is a data company, and it's absolutely right. There's, if everyone looks at their own organization, there's very important data that serves as part of the lifeblood of the organization.
So, and you're using, and just, I know I'm probably going to get ahead of myself here, but you're basically using Power BI as let's say, a dashboard to look at that data in a meaningful way.
Correct, and that's the primary tool that we use for creating the dashboards and the reports. But there's actually a whole bunch of tools that can come before that as well. And I think it's important to point out, like, why do we do this? What are some of the key benefits? And it's, whether it's retaining clients or how to increase profits, maximizing the value of the data, standardize the way people view the data, a lot of different uses. And the tools of the trade, there are a number of them, and this is not a full list. It all depends on the type of job, what needs to be solved, what's the challenge or what's the goal. And just stepping back to that earlier comment, I mean, it could be setting up, let's enable financials for our quarterly and annual meetings. So 24/7 access, we can see what's the current state of the data. To something where in the automotive industry, where millions of records are being recorded on a daily basis with maintenance data on car parts.
And this is real-time data. This isn't, I print out a report and let's be honest, a week from now, an hour from now, the data is no longer useful. This is real-time data that you're getting, correct?
Right, and it comes back to, what is the challenge or what is the goal? Because you can set this up for real-time data, for data that's available every minute or 5 minutes, every hour, 24 hours.
Great. Well, let's get into each one of these because, data factory, before I got into this, I never even heard that term before.
Okay. All right. So yeah, we'll just start from the top and move our way down. And I'll be doing kind of a small hands-on demo with Data Factory. I'll be doing one with Data Warehouse and then one with Power BI, just because we don't have all the time. It seemed like those would be the most beneficial to show.
Okay, great.
All right, so the question is, okay, well, what is Data Factory? And you would use Data Factory if you have data coming in from multiple sources. Some clients, maybe it's only 1 or 2 sources of data. Some clients we've worked with, there's over 70 different sources of data. This can be relational data, non-relational. This can be data coming in through web services. It can come in from various types of data stores. And sometimes, so you have all this data coming in, and sometimes, ETL or ELT is needed. And what that stands for is extract, load, and transform, or extract, transform, and load, 2 different approaches, where, the data that comes in, it needs to be transformed and before it moves on to its final destination.
So when you say that, if IoT is one that I always think of that it sends a lot of data from a lot of different sources all at the same time. That's what you're talking about, right? Being able to take this data and turn it into information that you can now do queries against and things like that, correct?
Correct. So if you have data coming in just from one source, you probably don't need Data Factory. But once you have data coming in from multiple sources, and or there's some of it's real time, some of it's every hour, some of it's 24 hours, some of it's trigger based, that's when a Data Factory can be very, very helpful. So with that, I am switching over to my Azure portal. And I just want to make sure you can see my Azure portal right now.
It looks great, yeah.
Okay, so I created this dashboard and I just put the icons I needed so I didn't have to hunt around with all the different services. So let's go ahead and take a look at Data Factory quickly. It's not hard to set up. It's fairly quick. And this screen here, it has, the basic, Azure resource functionality. We have the log, access control, tags, locks. Happy to talk about those another time. In fact, we've gone over those in previous sessions with our intro to Azure last year. You have monitoring built in, diagnostic tools.
So is this a platform as a service? In other words, it's pre-configured almost, and all you're doing is basically tweaking it for your needs?
Yes, it's load balanced, it's clustered, you access it all through a web-based interface, and it's all configurable through the interface. That said, and actually we'll go into the web interface. So on overview, right here, author and monitor, I click that and it's going to go ahead and open up the data factory, which I had open in another tab anyway. All right, so this is the data factory landing page and has a nice let's get started, how to create a pipeline, templates, copy data, SSIS integration, bunch of tutorials here. So if you're interested, how do I work with Data Factory, or how do I transform data with Databricks? A lot of tutorials, a lot of templates available. To get started with it, it's not that complicated. Where things get complicated is when you have a lot of data and complicated data, and you're trying to figure out and learn from that data. So in this left-hand vertical navigation, we have, I'll go ahead and expand it so you can see the names. We have author and monitor. It's fairly straightforward. And I created a very, very simple demo because I thought that was kind of best to start. I start with a connection down here. And I have one already, but I'll just show you how to create a connection. And immediately, as soon as I do that, you already see, hey, wait, here's Amazon Redshift, here's Amazon S3. And you're like, hey, those aren't Azure products. And that's the whole point of Data Factory. It can pull data in from all kinds of different sources, many different kinds of data store, as well as through REST APIs. And this list goes on, and for people who are looking at this, you probably recognize a lot of these. Oh, here's Jira, here's Hive, Google data stores in here as well, QuickBooks, ServiceNow, Salesforce, and the list goes on.
So when you said that you could get multiple sources for data, this is what you're talking about, right? You could click on any of these or all of these and retrieve data into your data factory, correct?
Correct. Let's say I'm a global firm and I have data coming in from SAP, from SQL, from Oracle, from Workday. This can be where it all is brought in and you do the necessary transformations before it goes to, for instance, your data warehouse. And we'll talk about data warehouse shortly. All right, so that's, you do a connection. And I already did one to an Azure Blob storage account. Not very exciting, but it's my connection. And in it, I put in 2 data sets, input data and output data. And then I created the pipeline. And I have a very simple copy data pipeline. It takes it from one endpoint, and I'm not doing any transformation of the data, and I'm just copying it to another endpoint. Very basic demo, but as you can see from these activities, it can get, you can keep it super simple, but there is functionality to allow you to accomplish any need that you have. You can hook into Azure Functions, machine learning, basic kind of iteration and conditionals, HDInsight, which we'll talk about, Data Lake, Databricks, and here's the simple one I did. And you just take one of these and you drag it on, and you can start linking things together through this. But here's the copy function that I did under the activities, and I connected it to a source, which was my input data. I have my sync to the output data. I'm not doing any mapping or settings. Those are all things, of course, you can do. I kept this very simple. And then you can add a trigger. So I have one created, and we'll also create a quick trigger. So I'm going to do trigger now, and it's just running everything.
So just for the audience sake, if you want to ask Jason questions during the demo, on your Go to My Webinar application, there's a section that says questions. And I'll be looking at that as Jason does the demos. And if you have questions or things that you want to know a little bit more about, please ask them in that question section. And we'll try to do it while he's actually doing this live demo.
All right. So I switched over to the monitor section, and here I can look at my pipelines, and here I see the manual trigger that I kicked off and it succeeded. Now imagine you have a dozen or several dozen different data sources. One great benefit is if there's ever an error in the data ingestion, you can find those errors. You can be alerted as soon as they occur and figure out, well, what's happening in this data flow that we're setting up. Now I'm going to go back real quick to author, and we ran an existing trigger. You can also create scheduled triggers.
So you can automate it almost.
Correct. And rather than creating a new one, here's one I created called trigger one. I gave it a start time. I gave it an end date. It runs every minute, and it's active. And this will run on its own. So there's time-based triggers. There's event-based triggers. Many different ways to trigger the different pipelines that you create. And each pipeline is taking data, doing something with it, and moving it to its next location. Somewhat of an oversimplification, but really at a high level, that's what Data Factory is. Think of it as like a factory. It takes in all these different parts and puts them together in a way that makes sense for the organization. So
Okay.
with that.
Well, let me do this also, Jason, while we're at this point. We have 3 questions that we wanted to ask the audience today. So if you guys would just take a minute, I'm going to ask you a couple poll questions here. They're real quick. First of all, are you guys using any analytics today? And I'm going to launch the poll, and if you could quickly answer the question for me, we'd appreciate it. So right now I'm at 32% of the audience, and it's almost 50-50, yes and no. Right now it's 45%, 50% yes, 50% no at 50% of the audience. Wow. So I think I'm going to play that in the lottery today. So, but okay, great. I appreciate your doing that. I'm going to close the poll. My second question is, are you using any cloud-based analytics today? And I'm going to launch that to see if anyone's using anything in the cloud. And believe it or not, we're getting, in other words, it's like 60% in the cloud right now. So a lot of people are using the cloud as their platform for analytics. So I'm going to close that. And then my last question to you is, do you have an active Azure environment? Because the tools that we're showing you today are running in Azure. They're basically, only Azure. So it looks like, Jason, about 90% of our audience, in fact, exactly 90% of our audience has an active Azure subscription. So this is very relative for 90% of the audience. So just wanted to ask those quick questions while we had a quick break here.
All right, very nice. All right, so we talked about Data Factory. You can use it to connect and collect data, transform it, enrich it, publish it, and monitor it. And around the monitoring, you can create alerts around metrics and events. That gets us to Event Hub, which is It's a very cool service. Um, I'll pose Event Hub this way. Let's say you have lots and lots of data coming in very, very quickly. You might then want to put an Event Hub in front of your data factory. Event Hub is, it can serve really as the front door pipeline. It's an event ingester, and it has the capability to kind of receive millions of records a second. So very important. Let's say you have IoT devices out there, or just a lot of data coming in very, very fast. It might be important to put an Event Hub in front of your data factory, and the data factory can pull the data from Event Hub.
So it's almost like a caching device prior to ingesting all the data.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Exciting service, especially for people in big data and where they're receiving millions of transactions a second. And that leads us to data warehouse. So you have to put the data somewhere. Data factory is connecting multiple data sources, transforming, enriching it. And the data is moved into a data warehouse. Now, you need a data warehouse when your total storage needs are clearly growing and growing beyond what you'd want with a traditional SQL server. SQL data warehouse, I think, is can store a petabyte of data, which is a lot. That's 1,000,000 gigabytes, or just over 1,000 terabytes. And your SQL warehouse becomes your kind of one location of truth. This is where all your data goes. And the way data warehouse is architected is you can do complex queries across all this data very, very quickly.
Now, is this in lieu of, I know you mentioned Databricks earlier in the presentation a couple of times, as a matter of fact. Is this in lieu of a Databrick, or is this in conjunction? And what is a Databrick anyway?
Yeah, good question. So we'll talk a little bit more about Databricks toward the end, but Azure Databricks is the service that Microsoft has created for supporting Apache Spark in Azure. It's a fantastic tool. You can use it for analyzing data. There's a lot of tools that you can use with it, such as TensorFlow, and you can do machine learning modules. So it's not a data warehouse.
It's not a data lake either, is it?
No, and we'll talk about data lake next. Data lake is a very important subject. But for now, I'm going to jump into a quick demo of the data warehouse. So for that, I'm back in the Azure portal, and I'm going back to my custom dashboard here, and I'm clicking on the SQL data warehouse that I created earlier. Now, for those of you who've had to create data warehouses in the past, a number of years ago, for some it could have taken a week. For some organizations, I've heard them, it could take them several months to get it up and running. It's as a service, click, click, click. In about 15 minutes, I have a data warehouse, that can store a petabyte of data, and I can do complex queries against. It completely changes kind of data warehousing as we knew it before, when it was on-prem servers. Now, I pulled in a bunch of sample data that Microsoft provided, and we'll take a look at that. But a couple of things I just want to point out quickly with the data warehouse is, this is all about a web-based clickable configurable interface. I have my maintenance schedule here. I can enable the geo backup policies. I have access to my connection strings, and we have this security section here. This you'll also see with traditional Azure. SQL, but this is all stuff that's really nice to have. Notice I have this data discovery and classification, vulnerability, and advanced threat protection. Just to give you an idea of the power of these tools. I'm looking at data discovery and classification, and it's saying, hey, you know, this data that you pulled in here, we recommend that, you know, these tables and columns, you give it a label of confidential. And as I scroll down, notice it's saying, hey, this should be confidential GDPR. So this is helping me, you know, stay GDPR compliant, to become aware of data that I need to include in my documentation and processes. So very nice to have. And better yet, what I can do is I can just select all of them and say, hey, applied selected recommendations. Labels with data is another topic, and I'm happy to talk more about that maybe offline, or if someone wants to have a more detailed discussion later. But they're not hard to do, and it can make your lives easier on the compliance side. All right, so that was, you know, just one of the recommendations for the data warehouse. Vulnerability assessment, all built in. Um, I need to have auditing. Now, whoever set your data lake up, if you see this, that's a red flag in and of itself, because they should already have turned this on. But I left it in here for the demo, and you can click on it, read it, saying, huh, okay, this sounds important. And it says here, click here to remediate. And I can actually turn it on right here. Now, I'm not going to turn it on there because I just want to show you where it is in the interface. Under security, under auditing, it's right here. You just turn it on, pick a storage account. And I'm going to pick the one I created for the webinar. Retention days, you know, how long do I want it? Unlimited, or hey, I only need it for a short period of time. Very easy to do.
What is the log analytics? I see two preview buttons down there. And Event Hub happens to be one of them that you just spoke about.
Yes, so with data in Azure, you frequently have the option of sending log data and metrics to a storage, a log analytics, or an Event Hub account. Microsoft itself uses Event Hub for a lot of the Azure services. Firewalls and virtual networks. Here I opened up the IP address of my local machine at the Office Connect. This last one, transparent data encryption, this was also on the advanced data security. Very easy to turn it on. Encryption at rest, done.
Wow.
All right, so this is the data warehouse. This is the extent of my management of it. Very easy to do. Now, let's actually look at some of that data in there. And this will be a quick preview into Power BI. So as I mentioned earlier, I had a bunch of sample data already loaded. And I'm going to opening up the desktop version of Power BI. I'm clicking on Get Data. And again, Power BI desktop, I have all kinds of data sources I can pull from. I'm just going to do a search for warehouse. There's Azure Data SQL Warehouse. I'm connecting. And here I got to put in the data warehouse server. And here I'm going to put in the database. All right, so I'm just going to pull data from aggregate sales. I could select multiple tables. I'm going to load this data, and we're going to quickly create a dashboard. All right, so here we have visualizations. We're going to start with the globe, and we're just going to add postal code and sales amount. So this is pulling data from my data warehouse, which is my one true source of data for the organization. And with a couple clicks, I've created a potentially a very useful visualization of that data. So I'm not done. Let's also do clustered column chart, and let's use it with, oh, actually that's the one thing you got to do. I did that one. I'm going to create a new one now. So we're going to do sales data, and let's do customer income. Now, that's not very useful yet, and that's because I haven't added anything for an axis for the data. All I have to do is drag this over to the axis, and bam. We'll do just one more, and we'll do this with a line chart. Nope, I did it again, didn't I? All right, clicking a new one, line chart. Let's pull one in for sales amount and order date. Now, one of the cool things about Power BI is it's dynamic. So let's say I want to narrow in on this set of data. It's dynamically updating all the charts for the data that I'm selecting. So that's just a quick overview of the Power BI desktop. We're going to come back to that with some more demos, and that's pulling data in real time from the data warehouse running in Azure. And this is the desktop app on my PC here.
So Jason, I know we're going to get into this a little later on, but with Power BI, you can basically turn this data into actionable information based around what you're looking to get out of this data, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And that's the whole point. Let's find the value in the data. And that's where data analysts, data scientists come into play. And it all depends, again, what the challenge or what the goal is. And then you figure out which of the tools you need to use. And that, I think that's a good segue into data lake, and you had mentioned it earlier. So data lake in some ways is similar to data warehouse, but they are very different. Data lake, and the differences, I would primarily describe them as SQL data warehouse is structured and perhaps we'll call it less agile. And it's typically what a organization will use for their data, whereas data lake also can scale to petabyte, highly agile, and is what perhaps data scientists will use. And
so it's more flexible than a warehouse, but a warehouse is more regimented. How's that?
I like that. And Azure data warehouse is SQL, and data lake runs on top of Azure Blob storage. So the storage is less. It does get into petabytes, but it has a different use, and it's all about making sure you're using the right tool for the right job. What Data Lake does offer, it introduces hierarchical namespaces for the blob storage, and that can make things, put things into hierarchy of directories for, tied into your data access. But data warehouse used by organizations, data lake typically used by data scientists.
Now, I noticed you mentioned Databricks being used by Spark. You can't use a data lake or a data warehouse or SQL warehouse for Spark? Is there any restrictions on any of these other ones that you have to use certain things or certain models for certain operating systems or certain platforms?
Well, it's that famous answer in IT, yes and no. You could end up using all of them. It all depends on, the complexity of your environment and what the goals and challenges were. We've worked with clients that had both data lake and data warehouse set up, but for different purposes. And pulling in Apache Spark and using tools like TensorFlow for machine learning. It all depends on what the needs are.
Okay.
And this brings me to Azure Analysis Services. Great tool. We won't really spend much time on it other than a quick mention, but it's can make your lives easier if you need to do kind of mashups and modeling very quickly. And it will just put all the data in what they call a tabular semantic data model.
So it's
And
almost like your own data scientist without having a data scientist.
it could be, and that's where something like Databricks with Apache Spark can come into play. It also has a number of analysis services, but this can be a very useful tool. Again, it all depends on what you're trying to solve.
Okay.
And this gets us to HDInsight. So this is Microsoft's Azure resource for managing what they call the full spectrum of open source analytics services. So here you have Hadoop, Kafka, can use Hive and Pig queries. Great tool. So
And I
part of
know
the
that this is something that they have that you can actually get a free trial on in Azure. So, something that if the audience wants to, they can go in and type in a search engine HDInsight, and there is a free trial out there from Microsoft.
Yes. So part of Microsoft's goal is just, when you looked at Data Factory or Power BI to, it was supported Oracle, it supported Amazon, supported Google data storage. The goal is to let's support everything. Let's make great tools that can, make data analytics better and help you solve the challenges or let you reach your goals. And if you're using open source, it's directly supported in Azure through HDSite.
Well, I think they also have made it easier, right? By not having to learn how to set it up and configure it, but just really focus on the benefits that you can get out of it, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And this was something that I actually asked when I was talking to Jason, and Power BI is something that maybe a lot of people don't know about it. And there are actually 3 different options that you can have for Power BI, and I will tell you, the free version, which is downloadable, you can get it anytime you want. The desktop version that Jason was showing you before, that's free from Microsoft. And the cool thing about it is when you want to share this data, you can use the Power BI desktop and use Teams in combination together to share this data across your whole organization by setting up a team and a channel for each one of those specific groups or specific projects that you might have where you'd be using this type of data. The full-blown Power BI Pro is something that you can get on a monthly subscription, $9.99 a month. See, I was wrong, Jason, on that. I thought it was a different number, but it's cheaper. It's only $9.99 a month. And that one is by individual user on a monthly basis, allow you to create your own templates and so on. And then there's the big guy, the Power BI Premium, which is a corporate license to run this across a corporation for $49.95 monthly. So those are your options when it comes to Power BI. Great tool, something that can enhance the reports and the information that you're giving to people.
All right. So let's actually move on to some of the Power BI demos now. And one thing I'll just add though with Power BI, there's another option called Power BI Embedded, and that's another Azure resource that you would use to embed Power BI dashboards and charts into your own applications, and you can make those publicly available or require authentication, but your end users don't have to have any license to use Power BI Embedded. Another great tool, again, it's all about understanding what are the tools available and making sure you're using the right ones for the right job. All right, so I have a couple examples set up for Power BI. And keep in mind something that Kevin said is you can very easily add these charts, these dashboards and charts into Teams. And that potentially could solve a lot of communication flow as far as distributing information and reports. So this is just a basic one. It's an income statement. Now I can click on month to date, year to date. I can swap the months, and it's dynamic, pretty useful, and you can control who has access to this. I can go into budgets, and remember earlier when I built the dashboard from the data and data warehouse, because I have the desktop here, I can actually click on these sections and say, hey, what is this? Oh, this is a matrix visualization, and what is this? This is a waterfall chart. And you can actually change the charts as needed to update, the data that you're seeing. Discounted cash flow, and this was the beginning of another example. So very cool, very nice. Financials, all companies need those. Let's move on to marketing. So, whether you're using Dynamics 365 or Salesforce or a number of the other tools out there, you can pull that data in and start creating some very useful reports around marketing campaigns. I can look at my pipeline. I can see that right now we're closing 18.8% of the
leads that come in.
exactly.
Right. I'm a sales guy, so this is pipeline. We know all about this. So I know you're saying marketing, but this also is a great sales tool.
Right, and then you can see return on investment. And again, any one of these I can click on. Hey, purchase. Where's all this coming from? I can look at by the campaign. I can see where in the world. I can look across customer segments. I can click on any one of these. So all very useful data that the people in that department can use to make, hopefully better decisions or more informed decisions about where to spend, how to spend, and who to reach. So just clicking on these tabs, more data. Hey, the Gen Y, they more or less, using blogs less, Twitter, forums, and Facebook more. What about, baby boomers? Okay, what about Gen Z? All interesting information. Same with email analytics. And they also have location analytics. And all of these, you're wondering, how did they do this chart? You click on it. I see that this is the donut chart, and I can see what's the data being pulled. Customer segment, visit type, visitor ID, and I can look at the filters being applied, and I can start updating those or manipulating them to create new charts.
And
right, so
this chart is only for you. This information is out there, and other people can say, I don't need that, but I need this, and just a click of a button gives them what they're looking for.
Yes. And see, we have one on sales. So marketing before, here's also that same pipeline. I can see where things are there. Let's say sales performance. I can click on target sales let's go to quotas. Um, and I can see, whoa, look, Joe Healy's doing very, very well. I can click on him and understand more about, where are his deals and where aren't they. And I can also look for trends in the data. So all very valuable data. I can zero in on specifics, again, to help me make better decisions, help me create some strategy around the data.
So the first part of what we talked about, Jason, was getting the data. And this end part with Power BI is using the data to make those informed decisions.
Correct. And if there's data coming in from multiple endpoints, maybe some transformation is needed. Maybe you're pulling in data in from accounting, you're pulling it in from CRM, you're pulling it in from ERP. That's where Data Factory comes in. And this is where you're creating visualizations of that data. Now, this example, and I have one more after this. This is data on the opioid crisis in the US, and I only have up till the end of 2015. But we've all heard about it on TV. If we haven't been paying attention to enough, you can actually see the fatalities by calendar year, going up and up and up, and it went up significantly more after 2015. So you can understand why with this data, people would say, there is definitely a problem here. Now I can look at the data in many different ways, but the one I want to point out really is this chart here, where here I see counties with Kentucky with the highest amount. But I look down here and I see with sorted by fatalities, and I see Pennsylvania, Arizona, Florida, Maryland, New Mexico. I only see Kentucky once here. And this comes to the point of why you need different charts to look at data, because you might come away with the wrong conclusion. You have to look at data in different ways, and that's where your data analysts and your data scientists come into play by putting together the right chart so you can look at the data differently to arrive at the correct decision. Because I might look at this and say, Pennsylvania. Here, if I click on Kentucky, I can see, okay, they don't have the highest in the for county, but they have a lot of counties that had fatalities. So again, this is data very helpful for those in healthcare and health policy and legislation. And I actually have two more quick demos. This one was a quick demo we did for an organization that has like 600 residential properties around the US. They wanted data to understand what's going on at all our different properties. Which ones have vacancies, what's the revenue, what's the loss, what are the trends in bookings. And you can drill all the way down to the layout of the property, what's been rented, what's not, revenue, etc. So not hard to do, but very helpful data. And then let me get to, I have one more. And this one's the demo that I'll end with. It's an organization who sells 4 different products, and they're trying to understand repair costs for the products. This is an IoT setup. Data is being sent. They can see of these 4 products, we've had this many service hours. These are the average service costs. We have an overstock of certain types of inventory. And systems like this make it very easy to then pinpoint where the problems are, to do predictive analysis and also make corrections. So I'll walk through this one quickly, but one thing I can do is, looking at the different products, I can see, where the overstock is. for the different items, the number of service hours tied to each of the products. If I go to the IoT hub here and unit temperatures, so I can look at a particular unit ID, and I know from the example that this is not a common drop, an increase in temperature. This is abnormal. If we look at other units, they have ups and downs, but not to the degree that one was. So someone who works in this department can start using this data to narrow in, hey, where's the faulty component? Now, like many organizations, manufacturing, you have more than one supplier for each component. So I can drill down further and look at a particular product, see the open work orders, look at the a batch filter, and something that I can do, I might look at this and say, hey, you know what? This is not helpful to me, these work orders. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I need to add another type of chart. And just to show you that you can do this, there's also other chart tools out there. It's not just the ones that you see right here. So let's see. Some sand key, which we actually saw in some of the other ones. I'm going to go ahead and add it. It's now added to my visualizations. And we're going to look at the data quickly. Let's see. By production flow, we're going to add a count. We're going to add, let's see. Let's add source and destination. And using these tools, someone in this department is able to identify for that particular unit which had the most issues, who were the two suppliers of those parts, and start narrowing it down to determine where the faulty component is, which supplier it's coming from, so that corrective action can be placed. So that's a quick example on the manufacturing side, tied into both predictive analysis as well as what's the right word? Determining where the what the faulty component is and who the supplier of that component is, so the change can be made.
So this is like real life data that people can action on and basically manipulate to find the answers that they're looking for. So I think this is what our customers, at least what I was trying to get out of this. So just so for next steps, I know we're running up here on the hour, and we don't want to take up too much of your time. And we appreciate you coming to our webinars. This is the third in our series. But reach out to us. We're still doing security assessments, network discoveries for you, help you optimize your network. Like I said, there is a free trial out there for HDInsight, but we're also available. Jason and his whole team that work with analytics on a daily basis are here for our clients to be able to help you take advantage of what's available to you in Azure and what's available to you from an analytics side. Is there anything you want to close with, Jason?
No, other than, if you do have questions around the advanced analytics practice, whether it's just getting started with Power BI or challenges with your data warehouse, maybe it's performance of those resources, maybe it's just you're deciding it's now time to start using a data warehouse. We're here to help. If you have questions, we can help you look at, answer those, solve challenges, help you meet goals.
Yeah, reach out to your champion salesperson or your MessageOps salesperson, and they can get the right resource for you. With that, Jason, thank you very much for all three of the webinars. We appreciate your expertise, and we look forward to hearing some more from you in the near future.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Hope this was helpful, and we look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.